Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 296 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Michelle. Michelle is Scarlett's mom. Now, every episode, I feel like I take away something from the parents that I talk to. But there are a few episodes where I take away something so significant that it really changes how I think about my grief journey. I can think about a few examples of that off the top of my head, but I'll give you two. The first one is episode 145, when Ella's mom talked to me about how Ella used the phrase excruciatingly beautiful. And I have since talked about so many events in my grief journey that I now consider excruciatingly beautiful. Much more recently, Rob's dad was on talking about his book and how he described bereaved parents as extraordinary parents. A group of friends and I have come to use that term quite often now, talking about when we have these events in our lives and how they are events that ordinary parents don't do, but we as extraordinary parents do. So I have to say, this episode gave me one of those aha moments, and it comes very early on. I hope that all of you will learn the lesson that I learned today, because while our tears and our grief journey may not be pretty, it truly is beautiful. As you listen today, I think you will understand that statement more and more. I also want to say today, if you would like to share your story with me, feel free to email me. Go to my website, andysmom.com, or email me at Marcy, M-A-R-C-Y, at andysmom.com. I am getting quite a few interview requests, so we probably won't be able to do things really quickly, but if you want to tell me your story, I would love to hear it. And then we can talk about getting on the schedule later down the road if you'd like to. Right now, though, I want you to sit back and enjoy listening to Michelle, Scarlett's mom. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I am looking forward to hearing all about your daughter, Scarlett. So do you want to just start out by talking about her?
Sure, I'll try.
Yeah.
I just talked to my counselor last week and said something about crying. And I was like, crying's not pretty. And she said, no, it's not pretty, but it's beautiful when you're crying about your daughter because you miss her.
I absolutely love that. That is something that I'm going to take with me forever. Yes, crying isn't pretty, but it is beautiful. It certainly can be. Thank you for that gift already.
I'm a mess. It's been a week.
That's okay. That's okay. How many times have I called myself a hot mess on this podcast? All the time, literally. Yeah. You've been listening for a long time. You know how much I call myself a hot mess. Let me tell you, I've been a hot mess the whole week because we had our Andy Larson Memorial Concert. So talk about being a hot mess. I've been a hot mess. So you don't even worry about it, okay?
Okay.
Don't worry about it. But the crying is beautiful.
It is.
Not pretty.
No, it's not pretty, but it's beautiful.
Okay.
Scarlett is my second child. We have 3 children. Susanna is 21. This is her room. And then Scarlett would be turning 19 on April 22nd. And
that's a day after Andy's birthday?
Oh, really?
Andy's birthday is the 21st. He would be turning 21
on
the 21st. Okay. So anyway, we have that in common too.
Yes. Yeah. April is the cruelest month. And then we have Max, who will be 14 in May. So he's, about 5 years younger than Scarlett. And where did it begin? And Scarlett was born and she helped me feel more confident about being a mom. And my daughter, Susanna, was kind of a challenging baby, very colicky and had reflux, but then ended up being a really easygoing, although intense toddler. And then Scarlett came along and she was just, I called her my angel baby.
Right. Way easier, huh?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, she slept. So, I mean, you just lay her down and, she would be awake and then she'd just relax and just go to sleep on her own. She was just so calm and sweet. I kissed her all the time,
right,
200 times a day, at least.
So, those babies are blessings, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
I kind of, and honestly, you appreciate them so much when they're not your first baby.
Yeah. Yes.
I just saw a family and they had their first baby, and their first baby, this is a really good baby. I had to say to them, okay, I really want you to appreciate this because this is probably not going to happen with any other kids that you have.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they can really appreciate and understand how blessed they are. But you had a tough one first, so you're really good.
Yeah, and I really wasn't, nobody's really prepared to be a mom, but I was only 25 when Susanna was born, and really we hadn't been planning on starting a family, so then Scarlett comes along and here I am already a mom, and she's so easy, and she was just a wonderful little baby. And as she aged, she started growing into a big personality. She was obviously, we knew from a pretty young age, very, very smart. And then in kindergarten, she was tested for gifted and ended up in the gifted program all through school. And it was, very high achieving student. She danced, her sister was a dancer, and she ended up dancing. She tried a lot of things. She was a swimmer. Everything that she tried and wanted to do, she ended up being very good at. She was a great swimmer. She played the piano. She loved animals. I saw your post this week about Debbie and then her daughter, Kelsey. And how much Kelsey loved dogs, and Scarlett loved all animals, but especially dogs. We got her a dog when she was 8, and we still have her dog, Lady, who's a little fluff ball. She's a little Havanese, and she trained Lady and took great care of her and would take her on long walks. She got old. I didn't let her when she was 8, but she would take her on long walks. And so then she started middle school, and the end of her 6th grade year, she got a cold. This was right around her birthday, and she had like a birthday sleepover with some friends, and she had a little cold. Not a big deal. She seemed fine. And then a week went by and we had to go back to the doctor because she just wasn't getting better. It was kind of in her chest, and took her to the doctor. They gave her the nebulizer and more antibiotics, a different antibiotic, and still was having trouble breathing. And so we ended up going back to the doctor. Long story short, they refer us to a pulmonologist. So we go to the pulmonologist, and he wants to get an x-ray of her chest because she's having such a hard time breathing. The doctor thought maybe she had asthma. The pulmonologist suspected asthma at the time as well until we got the x-ray. So we went to the Children's Hospital, the Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital, and had the x-ray, left, went to get ice cream. She loved ice cream. And then the pulmonologist called us and said, we need you to come back to the hospital and have a CT scan. And I'm still like, this is me. I've never been an anxious, overly worried mom. This still didn't strike me as anything to worry about. So we finished our ice cream, went back, got the CT scan, which was very scary for her because she had to have an IV. She had never had an IV. She was always very, very healthy. So that was scary for her, but she got through it. She was brave and had the CT, and then they had us wait in a little waiting room. And the pulmonologist called me and said that he was sending over his very good friend who is an oncologist. So she asked me, what he said. He said, no, an oncologist is coming to talk to us. And I think what's going on is there's a tumor in your chest. And she said, am I going to die? Oh. And I said, no, we're going to fight this. And for me, that was what kind of defined the next however many years of treatment she went through was, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to live. We're going to get through this, and you're going to live a healthy life. And that was in my heart that was what was going to happen.
Right.
Maybe it was naive. Maybe I should have, at least for myself, recognized that this was a very, very serious diagnosis, and that, the chance of her surviving was pretty small. That I wanted to do that for her. I wanted to give her that hope.
Right. That's what I was just going to say. I think it's very hard to go on living when you don't have hope. And so it's important for you to live with hope and for you to give her hope. And I think that's kind of what you need, right? And it's what she needed. She needed some sense of hope.
Yeah.
So how long did it take them to actually have a diagnosis then? Did they get that pretty quickly, or?
It took about a week to get the right diagnosis. It was a very rare presentation of AML. She didn't have any detectable leukemia cells in her blood. She had myeloid sarcoma. So she had a pretty large, liquid tumor in her chest, kind of right below her collarbone, that was pressing on her esophagus, making it her esophagus. Is that right? The breathing tube.
Her trachea, probably. Trachea.
And so that was making it hard to breathe. And it also made it hard for them to get a biopsy right away, because they didn't want to put her under, because they were afraid that she wouldn't, it would press and cut off her airflow. So we did steroids and things to kind of shrink the tumor first, so then she could have the biopsy. And then once she did have the biopsy, the diagnosis was, I don't know, it was not correct. And they figured this out after talking to various doctors around the country. Okay. And they came up with that it was AML, myeloid sarcoma, which is pretty rare, especially with children. Well, actually, not especially with what I've been reading lately. It's actually more common in children than it is in adults to present that way. So
not a common.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's very, very rare for everyone. But so we started treatment. Let's see. So this is, I just told you a little bit about her life before diagnosis, right? And who she became after diagnosis, it was just incredible to watch and to help her become this person. She didn't want to spend any time in the hospital sleeping. She wanted to spend all of her time doing crafts and artwork. And if she didn't feel up to doing something like that, then we watched movies, funny movies, comedies mostly. And she looked forward to the pet therapy dogs coming to visit her. Made these arts and crafts and wanted to decorate her hospital room, floor to ceiling, all the walls. And she took a little bit of time for her to warm up to the nurses and to her doctor, who I didn't like him. She didn't like him. We wouldn't have liked anybody.
Right.
It didn't matter what they did or said. We didn't like being there. It was, of course, obviously heartbreaking, but he worked hard and he was able to earn her love, really. She really did end up really liking him. And they had a funny relationship and would kind of joke around with each other. And then we were there for 4 weeks for the first round of chemo, and then got to go home for a week, and then had to come back for another 3 to 4 weeks of chemo. And she was just incredible. It was really hard on her body, but she was so strong.
Yeah.
And she bounced right back every time. And then there was, of course, we had to decide so she relapsed, of course, after she went into remission. But first, she had a bone marrow transplant. And we got to choose whether or not we thought we wanted to do that, or if we wanted to just do the chemo, get into remission, and then kind of wait and see. But they encouraged us to go for the transplant. And they tested Susanna and Max was a match for her. So that day was an impossible day, having Max on the first floor, getting ready for surgery. It's general anesthesia. It's not, there's 2 big needles that go into his back. And then she's on the 5th floor waiting for his cells. My husband and I were both there trying to navigate that, making sure he's okay. And then I would go up.
Because how old was Max at the time?
He was 7.
Yeah.
And he was so happy to do that for her.
I'm sure he was. Yeah.
He was very brave. And after he was done and recovered, we brought him up to her room, and he was in his little hospital gown with nothing on underneath. And he was just running around the hospital room, with his little baby hanging out. And they were in bed together. I have a picture of him sitting next to her in her hospital bed. And I haven't looked at that picture in a while. I think they have his cells on the, going
in.
And there they are. Yeah. Maybe that'll be a picture I can send you.
Yeah, that'd be a fun one. Yeah.
So then she got his cells. And from then on, they really had a very interesting relationship, just closer than a normal brother and sister, especially being 5 years apart. And we did,
because part of him was in her then,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did tell him that we were really hoping, of course, that this will work and this will be her cure. But
if it's not his fault.
It's not your fault.
Right.
We tried. And so we bring her home after she recovers, and she probably had one of the fastest recoveries that they've seen. Like she was just so ready to get home. I mean, even though she was very busy in the hospital and seemed to not enjoy it, certainly not, but she made the best of her time there. But of course, she was very ready to get home and see her dog and just be with her family all the time. And her dog Lady, when she was so for the transplant, we had to go to a different hospital. But for the chemo, we were at Arnold Palmer, and at Arnold Palmer, they let you have your dog visit.
Oh, wow.
You just have to fill out a form and make sure the dog has been bathed in the past 24 hours or whatever. So we did that a few times, and Lady would come and visit her and stay for a half a day or so. So she was happy to get home, and we celebrated the first 100 days, after transplant. And then the timeline for me, I'd have to look back. It gets a little fuzzy, but I believe it was around. So she had the transplant in August of 2018. Mm-hmm. And then I believe it was about January that she was due for a PET scan. So we had the PET scan, and our oncologist called and said that the tumor was coming back. And then I guess around the same time, she also had a bone marrow aspiration biopsy, and they could now detect the leukemia in her spinal fluid. So it was very, just a little bit, and the tumor was very, very small. So we had some time to figure out what to do and monitor it and see how quickly it was coming back. And it was coming back very slowly. So we had some time. We ended up going skiing in North Carolina in March, had a fun little vacation, and then came back and started kind of talking about what we were going to do next. And our oncologist had been in contact with people around the country, other oncologists, and he found a clinical trial for her in Cincinnati. So we decided to go ahead and do that. So we flew to Cincinnati in June or July. And we were there for 7 weeks. And she was in this clinical trial with some medications that were almost approved. I mean, it was like at the tail end of the clinical trial. And it seemed very hopeful to me. I was very hopeful about it. It was really hard to be so far away. My mom grew up actually outside of Columbus. And so we have some family there. So family that lives there came to visit us, and my husband and my son and my daughter flew back and forth. I was there the whole time with Scarlett. And we met a couple people, children, girls, 2 girls actually, that had AML as well. And they were both in the clinical trial. That one of them, her name was Gabby, and she was 2, and she would walk around the hospital halls, and they called it Gabonese. She was so loud and vocal, and she was just talking, so full of joy. None of it made any sense. That's why they called it Gabonese. And I think she was probably only 18 months at the time. So we got to know her and her mom a little bit, and Gabby never did reach remission. So she was never able to have a transplant. And she ended up dying when she was 2. And then another little girl was an infant, like only 2 months when she was diagnosed with AML. And same story as Gabby, just never able to reach remission to go for a transplant. And she ended up dying as well. And so at this point, I'm trying to maintain this hope, but it was hard. But after the clinical trials, the oncologist there didn't seem as hopeful as our oncologists at home or as happy with the results. But there wasn't no evidence of disease except just a little bit, something lit up. And it was right by her thymus gland. And so there was all this talk about, oh, maybe it's just the thymus gland.
Right. Yep.
So that we were always just kind of hoping that was it and not relapse. But they were happy enough to send us home another round of chemo and then another transplant. And this transplant was with an anonymous donor who we ended up meeting we started communicating with her a year after Scarlett's, the transplant. And then we actually got to meet her in 2021 in October at this gala that they do it's called Kids Beating Cancer is the organization, and they do this gala to raise money. And Scarlett didn't want to go. She was like, I don't want to be this cancer kid. I just want to be a kid. But I just kept trying to gently push it. We can meet Elena, who you've been writing to. And don't you think that'll be really cool? And Idina Menzel was performing at the gala, and you can bring your best friend, Emmy. And so anyway, I ended up talking her into it, and we went and we got to meet Elena, her donor, which was amazing. And I got ahead of myself. But so at some point, it was after her first transplant when she was at home recovering and everything, she started baking cakes. This was not my hobby. I made some cakes for their birthdays throughout the years, but I would not call myself a baker. But she started baking these incredible cakes. I already mentioned that she was very, very intelligent. She was also extremely creative. Like, she had this weird dynamic where she was extremely good at math, but also very artistic, which I think is kind of rare. It's a lot of times you're either, very mathematical
or creative. Yes. Not
yeah. And baking is kind of both, right? Like, you got to be good at math and measurements and all of this. And
you have to be pretty meticulous to get it to turn out well.
She is. And that's
the difference between a baker and a cook, right? A cook, you can kind of fudge around a little bit more. A baker, I think, is a little more meticulous. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I'm definitely a cook. I cook all the time. And, but baking, it's not something I, could ever get into. Really, honestly, I use box mixes most of the time when I bake their cakes, but nobody cared. They were fine. But she made them pretty much everything from scratch, and they were beautiful. And she made one. Our neighbor at the time asked her to make one for her son's birthday, and it was a shark theme. So she made this. It looked like a shark head coming up out of the water with its mouth open and with teeth. And then you cut it open, and all these little sprinkled fish come out. So she got into that and just kind of ran with it and started a business. That was started in 2018. And then, of course, she had to take a break for her second clinical trial in 2018 and another transplant. And then when she was at home, and we ended up moving just across town, which was a great thing for her, for all of us, really. But she kept going with the business and made business cards, and she was doing all these custom cakes for people's birthdays and everything. And I was going to go back to the gala. They asked if she would make a cake to auction off at the gala. And she did. She felt overwhelmed. So she was a little frustrated. She's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do all this stuff. We have to get a dress, and I have to make this cake, and we have to drive out there. And she was feeling overwhelmed, but it all worked out. And she made this beautiful cake, and it was like a Frozen theme cake because Idina Menzel, of course, was in.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And she was singing some of her Frozen songs. So she did this beautiful Frozen cake, and it was auctioned off for $4,200.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Yeah. Got to see a picture of that cake too.
Yeah. So that was a great event. So she started high school. She finished middle school, the hospital homebound program.
Okay.
And then started at the high school and kind of picked up where she left off. She was in the IB program. And of course, when she started ninth grade, and that was 2020. So She didn't start right away because I wanted to keep her home. She wanted to too for a few months because you could do virtual school for a few months. So I think she started going to in-person school in October of that year. And she had her mask on and she had, very, very short hair, but she was so happy to be going to school and just back.
And she was feeling good at this point.
Yeah, she really was. She was amazing. Like she just bounced right back.
Yeah.
And I mean, I say that, but I'm exaggerating, but it really did seem like that because that was what she wanted. She just wanted to get back to living. And even when she was in the hospital, it was like, how can I live? I'm here in the hospital. I'll do art, I'll make art, I'll do crafts. And then she's stuck at home recovering. What does she do there? How does she live? She starts baking cakes.
Yeah, right.
And but she did get to go to school. She finished 9th grade. And another interesting thing I want to mention is her best friend, Emmy. They were friends in elementary school and middle school, but not like close friends, more just schoolmates. But they became really close after Scarlett's diagnosis, which I will always, always be so, so incredibly grateful for Emmy.
Right.
What a brave girl.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking. That's really brave.
Yeah. So they had so much fun together. I mean, there's so many adventures. We went to concerts with Emmy and her mom. Emmy was over at our house all the time. Scarlett was over at her house. And so I feel like when, this 4 years from diagnosis to when she died, despite all of the time in the hospital and the treatment and then times when she really wasn't feeling well and sick, she really lived. She had a best friend. She got to go back to school. She started 2 businesses, actually, the cake business, and she made slime and bought all of these little cute containers, and she would make the slime and with, different scents and different little things that would go in the slime. And she had a Etsy shop that she sold the slime from. Anyway, so she really knew how to really live despite her diagnosis.
That's funny. You started out talking about how her personality really, truly blossomed after her diagnosis. And wow, it really did. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she was, she definitely was herself. It's not like
right.
I see all of these things that she did and ended up doing in who she was before diagnosis. But I don't know. Part of me thinks that it was like an effort for her, not just give herself hope and something to live for, but also that she was kind of doing this for her family as well.
Yeah.
And so she was in 10th grade and feeling okay until about December. She started having some strange symptoms. She started on the weightlifting team. She was tiny. I mean, she was like 95, maybe 100 pounds, just small but mighty. And she wanted to try weightlifting. She had started kind of at home and that we got her a weight bench and everything for the garage. And she liked to take her dog for long walks and run and ride her bike. And she told me and she told other people that she thought exercising was like an FU to cancer. Obviously, even though she's at that point a couple years out and had been in remission for a few years, but obviously it was still on her mind and she wanted to be as healthy as possible. And she was a foodie as well, loved food in all forms really, but she especially liked very healthy foods, lots of fruits and vegetables and things. So she was on the weightlifting team. She got really dizzy at one of the meets and ended up bumping her head. And we took her to the doctor. They said she had a very mild concussion, but then she just wasn't really recovering from that and started having abdominal pain. So we ended up back in the hospital right around New Year's, actually. And they found that she had a stricture in her liver, in her bile duct. So they went in and they had to put a shunt, I think, in there so things would keep flowing. Before we went to the hospital, some of her symptoms were her eyes were slightly yellow. So she was jaundiced, obviously. They did a biopsy and there was no evidence of disease. It was just inflammation. And they said, sometimes this can happen. She did have radiation before her first transplant. And they said sometimes this can happen years after a cancer patient has radiation. There can be damage to the liver. We got to go home after she had the shunt, I believe is what it's called. And she was okay for a month and a half. So like in February at some point, she was becoming jaundice again, having more and more abdominal pain, and had the same procedure done. And the inflammation had kind of spread a little bit. So they had to put in a longer shunt. But still no evidence of disease at this point. But she did have like a little, looked like a sty, but it wasn't on her eyelid. It was kind of right by her eyebrow, and it was a hard lump. And I kept asking them, what is this? And they said, oh, it's just a sty. Just put warm water on it. And I'm like, no, it's not a sty. And we're in the hospital. And is there an ophthalmologist you can send up? We never ended up seeing an ophthalmologist. I took her to my son wears glasses. I took her to my son's ophthalmologist, and he didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
Gave her something different to try. It wasn't going away. We went back. He tells us to go to this eye specialist. So we go to her, and she was the first one in a small little practice to tell us that she thought that she was relapsing, that this was a tumor. And I didn't believe her. And I was like, well, we've been twice now. Why wouldn't any oncologist at the hospital mention that or be suspicious at least? So we had that biopsied, and this was in March, and it came back that it was disease. And so then it took a while. Then at that point, it was like the hospital went on spring break or something. I remember being so frustrated. I'm like, okay, it's supposed to be spring break for the kids, not for the hospital, So I couldn't get her in until like a few weeks later to see somebody. And our oncologist, I was told, was now working from home selling pharmaceuticals. And I remember being pretty upset about that, but also understanding what a job to be a pediatric oncologist, right? Of course, you're going to get burned out and you're going to need to take a break. And it had been years since we had needed him. So we had to see somebody else. And had the PET scan, had the bone marrow aspiration, and it was everywhere. And the oncologist that we were seeing had a terrible bedside manner, but he explained to me, and he had to, for some reason, draw a picture. I don't know why. He drew a picture, and I was like, why are you showing me this? Like, you can just tell me it's everywhere, and I will understand. I don't need a picture of her body and where the leukemia is, So that was very frustrating. But we had to accept it. But it took a while. It took, I don't know, a few weeks at least. I was on the phone almost every day with an oncologist in Cincinnati. Also different oncologists, because both of the oncologists that we worked with there had moved on, and I couldn't get in touch with them. But I talked to this great woman who really kind of helped me to understand why they were telling me at our home hospital there was nothing they could do. And it was because she had GVHD at that point. The GVHD that she had as well, the transplant doctors, I kept pointing out to her different things going on with her skin. It was never a rash, which typically GVHD is like a rash. Hers was more like, it kind of looked like cellulite, but she was 95 pounds. She didn't have, I know people can have cellulite without being overweight, but this wasn't cellulite. We went to a dermatologist. The dermatologist diagnosed her with the graft versus host disease. So she had that going on. Her liver was sick. Her liver was declining, and she had another liver they went in to see what was going on and put another shunt to kind of temporarily give her some relief from like the symptoms and things. But so she had all these things going on. So there was no way that her body could withstand any treatment. And even if we could try some chemotherapy, there would be no chance for another transplant. She wouldn't be eligible for a transplant. Right. So it was really, there was nothing they could do. So it took a while. I was ready to get us both on a plane and go to Cincinnati and have them just completely look her over and basically get a full second opinion other than just talking to somebody on the phone. But they told me that they didn't know how long she had to live, that it could be days. Maybe they were right or maybe he was right. This was the oncologist that said that because we did try an oral chemotherapy just to kind of hold it off. And so maybe if we hadn't tried that, maybe it would have been a week that she had to live. But she ended up living for 3 weeks after they told us that there was no more that we could do.
But still, that's a whirlwind. That I went from thinking she's really okay to very, very quickly, this is the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. I mean, it did feel like a whirlwind. And I think I mentioned I was trying to write a medical memoir. And my counselor that I get to talk to, she suggested this a while ago because it could be helpful for new oncologists to read, to get an idea of how they can just be more proactive maybe, or just get the side of the parent's view or even the patient's view, just have a better sense of how do I approach this? What's the best way to approach this? And have a more confident bedside manner, I guess. And so I have been working on that. I've had to kind of...
Well, and I think, I mean, and I've said this on the podcast before, because, now Eric and I will go speak to physicians and physician groups and nurses about death and dying and being with families who are going through this, because we're not really taught it very well. And I just feel like even in the medical community, you just sort of avoid it by saying, okay, we're going to do this next, and then we're going to do this next, and then we're going to do this next. And then all of a sudden, okay, there's nothing else we can do. And there's not, I don't know. I just don't think that's handled as well as it could be, as opposed to looking at the whole person and talking through all of these feelings and things like that, and not have it be like, go, oh, nothing. There's no gradual kind of talking about this at all, I don't think. And that's what it sounds like it was with you too. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Okay, there's nothing left to do. Not maybe just a little softer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And also maybe like exploring. I mean, the thing that got me was like her disease was so rare to begin with. And so why wouldn't we just be curious about all these different symptoms that are coming up, such as the liver? Okay, yes, you biopsied, there was no disease, but maybe you just missed it. Maybe it was missed. Okay, there's a lump on her eye. Let's do a little research. Would there ever be relapse presented like this? Because I have read that it's not, of course, it is a rare disease, but that is a presentation. And so I didn't feel like anyone was really hearing my concerns. Like, let's look into this. And then the letdown and how it was approached as well. Like, I actually wasn't the doctor that was on the floor that day I think it was the day after she had the bone marrow aspiration. He said that they would have results the following day. So my mom came up to the hospital and stayed with Scarlett while I went home for a few hours to see my other kids and my husband and get a few things. And that's when I guess the oncologist that we were working with got the results and immediately wanted to deliver them. So he goes to Scarlett's hospital room and my mom's there, and he asked her to come out, and he tells her. And thankfully my mom is she's a tough lady and she handled it well, but that was the wrong thing for her to do. And then he called me, and I was at home relaxing for a few hours, expecting the results to be in the morning when I was there, when I was refreshed. But I was at home. My husband was making us some dinner. I was just relaxing in my home for a few minutes with my kids. And he calls then. It was like he couldn't wait to give us this news. It was, and I know that, of course, he's a good person. I'm not saying that, but it was like he had this news and he couldn't sleep on it. He had to tell us right away. And I get that you want to deliver this news, but this was not the right time. We were told that it would be the next day. So that's when we were expecting it. I was ready for the next day, and I was ready for it to be, knew that it was back. I knew that. I'd never expected them to say that there was nothing they could do. Even though I knew her liver was sick, I knew she had GVHD. I thought for sure we could get those two things under control, and that she would, watching her go through, the chemo, the transplant, the radiation that she had, and how she managed that, and bounce back, I was like, surely she's strong enough to do this again. So yeah, accepting that it took a week of me being on the phone with the doctor in Cincinnati a few times, and she had a really good way and sense of how to communicate this,
Scarlett through that.
She said to me one night when we were still in the hospital, the whole time I never thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I said, either. And brought her home, and I think it was when she was still in the hospital, she said to me and my husband, I don't want anybody to be sad. And I know she was 15. Maybe part of that is she didn't want all this trauma surrounding her, but I know her. So we brought her home, and it was very similar to how she was when she was undergoing treatment. She wanted to live as much as she could. And we baked some cakes. We played with slime. We went to Mead Gardens, which is this beautiful park where you can just walk around when she was feeling okay. We watched lots of movies. We had some great friends that helped support us, and they were asking what would be the most helpful. And I said, Uber Eats gift cards. And then I had friends that I ran with. I had friends at the preschool where I worked, and various other friends and family were sending us Uber Eats gift cards. And like I said, she was a foodie. So we weren't big food orders. I cooked food. Mostly we would make our own food because it's so expensive. But we had all these gift cards, and she wanted an acai bowl or something from this juice place down the street. I'm like, okay, let's order it, And it would arrive, and she would go, oh, it's beautiful. And she would taste it. It was so delicious. And we used probably $1,000 of Uber Eats gift cards on food that she was interested in trying. Or, of course, we got stuff too. Really just tried to be together,
Cherish time, yeah.
We had the palliative care doctor. Either I would talk to them on the phone, or they would come to the house like probably every other day or so. After that first week of having her home, she felt okay-ish during that first week, definitely on pain medicine and stuff. But then we kept having to kind of up her medications in the next 2 weeks. So they would come more often, or I would talk to them on the phone. And she was so strong. I mean, I gave her a bath the night before she died, and she was able to, it was just me and her, walk into the bathtub, and I gave her a bath. And we're not church goers, but we're very spiritual. And when we got married, we couldn't decide really what we wanted to do as far, do we want to go to church? Do we want to join a church? And we decided we didn't. So we didn't have the kids baptized. But when we had to make all these really impossible decisions at the end of her life, I had my friend call the priest at the church where I work at the preschool. I work at the preschool that's part of All Saints Church. It's an Episcopalian church. And he called me and said that he would be honored to baptize her if that's what we wanted. And so about 4 days before she died, we had her baptized, and she thought the whole thing was great. I remember he poured some water on her head, and it trickled down the side of her face, and she said, oh, that feels so good. Our dog, we have another dog too, our dog, Pepper, she was only like 1 at the time. Now she's 4. She still acts like a puppy though, but she came up behind Scarlett, and Father Stu was holding the holy water kind of right. He was real close to her, and Pepper came up behind Scarlett and started drinking the holy water. It's been my favorite. And she laughed, and we all laughed. And so that was beautiful. And I'm glad we did that, because then we were, of course, able to have her service at All Saints, which is where they all went to preschool, was at All Saints. And I started working there when Max was 3. And I was a pre-K teacher for a few years. And then I was teaching pre-K when Scarlett was diagnosed, and I had to quit my job and take care of her. And I did end up going back and subbing there after she was at home and recovering. I love that place. I don't know if I'll ever be able to say, I'm done. I'll always hopefully have a role there, because it's just such a wonderful church and preschool. So let's see, what else can I tell you? Oh, I did want to talk about, is there any more you want to know about Scarlett? Or
I think we can go ahead and start talking about your grief journey a little bit.
Yeah, She didn't want us to be sad. It's impossible.
It is impossible. I was going to say that. People say that to me all the time, like, Andy wouldn't want you to be sad. Okay, yeah, but Andy would understand that I am sad. If I had died and Andy would be alive, he would be sad. So it's one of those things that, like, she didn't want you to be sad, but let's switch things up a little bit. If you had died and she would be alive, would she be sad? Yes, she would. So as much as she didn't want you to be sad, she would understand that you are, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, of course. I've kind of come to interpret that as she wants us to be grieving her, but in our own way, in the ways
she wants you to keep living, right? She wanted your life to keep going on, even though hers could not. That's absolutely certain.
Oh, for sure. I think that I've learned to kind of just put aside what anybody thinks I should be doing, even myself, really.
Yeah.
Be really authentic with myself. And one of the things that I say to myself all the time, I say it to my family as well, what feels comforting. So we know we've done some different things so she died on April 20th, 2 days before she would have turned 16. So we kind of combined the anniversary and her birthday. One thing that we've done, because she was cremated and some of her ashes were at All Saints. And then we took them to North Carolina, one of her favorite places, and loved the water, especially in North Carolina. It was so cold, 60 something degrees up in the mountains. And she would just get right in when we would take her there. Even when she was a baby, we'd take her to the springs around in Florida, and, it was 72 degrees. And you would think, oh, screaming, crying, no baby would want to get in this water. No. She was so happy, so happy. She loved the water. So we definitely knew we wanted to take her there and intern some of her ashes in the river there. And so my counselor told me about these papers. They're dissolvable, and you can write a little note on your paper and then put it in the water, and it pretty quickly dissolves. And so I brought that with us when we took her ashes, and I gave everybody some paper and some pencils, and they wrote to Scarlett, and we let those go in the water. And so that's something that we've done several times now for her birthday or anniversary of her death. And it feels comforting. And it's not like, what's not comforting for us is talking and sharing our grief. Like, I mean, a lot, we do, of course, but it's just not comforting for us to sit around and look each other in the eye. And you think about with kids, like some advice that I was given a long time ago is the best way to talk to a kid when you have to, especially when you have to talk about something serious, is when you're in the car and you're not looking at each other, you're side by side, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, I do that to this day with both of my kids. That's the time to bring things up that might be a little uncomfortable instead of just sitting them down and eye-to-eye contact. And so the papers kind of felt like that. We were sharing our grief by being together and sharing our love for Scarlett, but we weren't talking. We were writing it down, sending off these notes to Scarlett. So we found that's comforting for us. Also lighting simple things, like subtle, simple things, lighting a candle, a special candle that we've gotten. And that's what we did last year. I still need to talk to them and see if we want to do something different this year or do one or both of those two things. They'll probably want to do that, but I want to ask everybody. And so, so what's comforting? So for me, right after she died, I developed this strange breathing habit, I guess you could call it. And whenever I was not exercising or not sleeping, I would take these very shallow breaths. It was almost just like kind of like sipping air through a straw, like a tiny little straw. Like that was the only air that I could get. It was just a tiny, tiny little sips. And I think I said I'm not an anxious person, but this brought on, not being able to breathe can bring on a lot of anxiety.
For sure. Right? For sure. It changes you, right?
Yeah. But I quickly learned that when I was busy doing things and distracting myself, I guess, it was easier to breathe. So I reached out to All Saints and I said, do you have a position for me for next year? And they gave me a couple options. And I chose to work in the infant room, which was something I'd always wanted to do there. So I started there in August of 2022 in the infant room with this wonderful woman, Jill, who is my friend and will always be my friend. She's an amazing lady. And we rocked babies all day and I talked and cried. And I also trained for a half marathon because I couldn't stop moving. Like, this was my first year after losing Scarlett. Don't stop moving. I learned to breathe because of that. I think I learned how to breathe.
Because you can't breathe shallowly when you're training for a marathon.
No.
No.
Yeah. So that's how I got through the first year. The second year, though, quickly learned was going to be completely different. And I started getting sick all the time. I developed silent reflux, which got so bad I had to quit my job. And they were very understanding. I said, I am a hot mess.
Right.
I am
totally get that. 100%. Yes.
And it was right before Christmas break, and they had somebody to fill in for me, just somebody that could just kind of come in. She was already helping us. We had like 7 babies, and we needed extra hands most days. So she was already working with us. And so she came in and took my spot. But I, of course, felt awful for having to do that. But everyone was very understanding. And I just had to melt, I guess, into this grief.
Loss. Yeah. I mean, you really have to feel it. And as much as you tried to kind of get through and train for a marathon, I'll do this to distract yourself, you can't distract yourself away from it. You just can't. I mean, at some point in time, you have to like dive into it, and it hurts and it's horrible, but you have to do it. Or you just, I mean, it starts to eat away at you, which it clearly did. I mean, medically it was getting you. I mean, there's a lot happening from you not really just feeling it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I tried to, write in my journal, on a regular basis and talk to my counselor, but it still caught up to me, and it took me out. And I think that was kind of what I was trying to avoid that first year. It was survival. Really. How do I survive? And I figured it out. And maybe some part of me was like, well, if I just make it through the first year.
Yeah, I know.
Then I'll be able
right. Then you think it's going to be okay. It's so funny because hearing you, I mean, I feel like my low was at 18 months, was my low point. And that's what I'm hearing from you, because you were that would have been about October of that year. And when the medical stuff starts coming and all that stuff's coming, and then it's right before Christmas that you had to leave your job. So it is right on the money with exactly where I was, really feeling like I'm at a low point emotionally,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, my counselor kind of warned me too. She was like, I have to warn you, the second year is going to be harder.
Yeah.
And I said, well, thank you for the heads up. So I kind of was anticipating that, and she was right. And it was brutal. So yoga, though, is something that has helped me relearn how to breathe. And I've been going to yoga classes for forever, but kind of recently, my friend Gina that I worked, we taught pre-K together, became really good friends, and would meet for yoga classes. She introduced me to this great yoga studio. So I try to go at least once a week now. So it was back, I don't know, probably September last year. I went to a class by myself, and the instructor said at the end of class, he said, I want you to imagine while you're laying here resting in Shavasana that somebody that you love and that loves you is standing in the doorway here. He painted this picture, and I immediately pictured Scarlett.
Right.
And it was real. I mean, it felt real. Like my imagination just created her in the doorway over to me. And then he said, imagine this person is putting their hand on your head and telling you that they love you. We're so proud of you. And it was incredible. It was so real to me. And so since then, it doesn't happen every time, but I'll be laying there at the end of class, and I imagine her right next to me holding my hand. Yeah. And I say, I miss you so much. Right. Love you. And she says, I love you, and I miss you. It was beautiful. It was so encouraging to me that I can still have this connection with her.
Yeah.
In a way that feels comforting to me. Like I said, not a church person. And that's, for a lot of people, that's kind of how they connect or reconnect. But I found this way that's very comforting. I mean, it is emotional, but I feel like she's encouraging me and she's telling me that she's proud of me and that I'm going to be okay.
Right. And that she is too. Right.
Yeah. She's too. Sometimes I imagine her with big, beautiful angel wings kind of flying right above me. I mean, you could go anywhere with that, right? And so that's very comforting and very spiritual. And
that's a good gift for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, wasn't expecting that, for him to say that. And then I noticed a few months ago, this particular instructor has some business cards out in the lobby area of the yoga studio, and he's a counselor.
Oh, really?
This makes sense, Yeah, like, of course, like, what a cool thing to say at the end of class. Just imagine somebody that loves you and that you love. And he did say alive, could be somebody alive or somebody that's dead. Anybody. Just picture somebody, and they're there and they're coming towards you and they're telling you how proud they are of you. And that's something that I being proud of myself has been hard, any bereaved parent can understand. We blame ourselves, we beat ourselves up, and we say,
we have done differently.
Yeah, what could I have done differently? Or maybe I should just loved her more when she was here. All these should have things. But really what we should be telling ourselves is, look what you did. You should be so proud of yourself. Yeah. Not only have you survived, but you've created joy, found joy for yourself, for your family. So that's something I've been working on with my counselor a lot, is just this self-talk. And I catch myself doing it all the time, just after I've done simple things. If I'm feeling really just down and tired, grief is exhausting, right? Like physically exhausting. And so if I accomplish something like going to the grocery store, she loved going to the grocery store. It will always be probably a big grief trigger for me, is going to the grocery store, because she just loved to go grocery shopping. And
it was the baking or something, huh?
Yes, the baking and food. She loved food. She loved picking out all kinds of interesting things to have it at the house that she knew they were going to make, or just things that she could grab and eat. Like, she loved sushi. So when I feeling really sad and down or exhausted, and I get the grocery shopping done, and I put it away, and then I just pause for a second and I say, I did it.
Yeah. Celebrate the little things.
I mean, it's just the little simple things, but the little simple things can be so hard sometimes. So if you keep telling yourself that, I mean, it's like a kid. If you keep telling them, you're great, you're doing so good, and you're encouraging them, and look at you, look what you just did, you're awesome. They're going to believe that. And you can do that to yourself. You can keep telling yourself, you're doing a great job. You did it. You got through the day. You got through the week, whatever.
It reminds me very much of my very, very good friend, Michelle, because I would say to her all the time, I just say, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And she would look at me and she would say, Marcy, you are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And she would say it to me all the time. Her response back always was, Marcy, you are doing this. And so now I think that a lot more. Like, as you're relaying that story, I start to think, I am doing this. I am doing this. And you are too. You are doing this. And sometimes it feels like you can't, but you do anyway. It's amazing.
Yep.
It's amazing what we're able to do, even when we're a hot mess.
Yeah, exactly. It's not pretty, but
it's not pretty, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing Scarlett today. It really has been not pretty, but beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And I can't even tell you, like, your podcast, listening to these moms and dads talk about their children, and it just makes you feel like you're not alone, because of course it's extremely, you feel alone, in your grief a lot, and it's very lonely. But then to connect with somebody like you and to hear all these different people, and all the stories are different, of course, they were all different, but they all have like this this love for our child, and we're forever going to miss them and try to live in their honor, right? And
live in a way that would make them proud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.